3 weeks after losing her unborn child, Rachel walked in on her husband's betrayal. She didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't say a single word. The girl, barely 22, scrambled to cover herself, eyes wide with fear. Tom just froze, mouth half open, like he'd seen a ghost. Rachel stood there, holding nothing but silence, and pain deeper than words. She turned around, closed the door behind her, and left. No confrontation, no closure, just a quiet goodbye to everything. She had already lost what mattered most. What more could he take? But what he didn't know was that she was already planning her return. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something colder. She filed for divorce the very next morning. No notes, no accusations, just signatures and silence. Tom tried calling, messaging, even showed up once. She never answered. Rachel packed her life into 2 suitcases and disappeared. Not even her best friend knew where she went. Every photo, every ring, every trace of him, gone in an hour. Her heart was shattered, but her mind was clear. She didn't just want to move on. She wanted to rise. Somewhere deep inside, a fire had started. One day he would see who she really was. A month later, she arrived in a city where no one knew her name. She started at the bottom, junior consultant at a mid-tier PR firm. Long nights, cold meals, empty apartments. But her focus never wavered. She worked like a machine, with precision, silence, and fire. Pain became fuel. Loneliness became armor. She watched, listened, learned. Every meeting sharpened her edge. People underestimated her, until they couldn't anymore. In just 6 months, she led her first major campaign. By 9 months, she was in talks to take over the agency. She didn't want pity. She wanted power, and she was almost there. 10 months after disappearing, Rachel became the youngest head of the agency. She walked into that boardroom like it belonged to her, because now it did. Her strategies were bold. Her campaigns? Ruthless and brilliant. No one cared about her past. They only saw results. She turned clients into fanatics, critics into allies. Her presence was quiet, but undeniable. Even the CEO stepped aside when Rachel entered the room. She had what she needed now: influence, access, and leverage. But fate wasn't finished writing this story, because someone familiar had just come knocking at the door. Tom's company was bleeding money. Fast day. His biggest account had walked out. Investors were getting nervous. He needed a miracle, and he needed it now. There was only one agency left with the reach he needed: Rachel's agency. He didn't know she ran it. Not yet. He still thought she'd vanished, left like a ghost. So he scheduled the meeting with confidence, thinking he could charm his way in. He had no idea what was waiting for him behind that glass door. No idea who was about to greet him with a smile. The elevator dinged. The door opened. She stepped in. Tom looked up and froze. For a second, he didn't even recognize her. Gone was the grieving wife. Before him stood a force of nature. She walked up, extended her hand, and smiled. "Let's talk loyalty," she said. Calm, clear, cutting no goodmile. The room fell into stunned silence. Tom shook her hand, his grip trembling slightly. She didn't blink, didn't flinch, just kept smiling. She had waited a year for this moment, and now it was his turn to break. The pitch meeting began. Rachel led it like a symphony conductor. Tom tried to keep his cool, but the cracks showed fast. Every campaign idea, every strategy, Rachel delivered it straight at him. She spoke of loyalty, commitment, trust, her eyes never leaving his. Her voice was calm, her words surgical. Tom shifted in his seat, struggling to respond without choking. The interns whispered. The executives watched him unravel. This wasn't just business. This was bloodless revenge, dressed in Prada. And every second of it was orchestrated by the woman he betrayed. She had waited for this moment, not to destroy, but to dominate. When the presentation ended, she slid the contract across the table. "This is our standard loyalty clause," she said, almost sweetly. Tom scanned the page and saw it. Buried in the fine print, a clause giving Rachel full rights to revoke the campaign at any moment. He looked up. She just smiled, tilting her head slightly. "I believe in clear boundaries," she added. He knew exactly what this was. Accept the terms and put his company and pride in her hands, or walk away and let everything crumble. He signed, slowly, with shaking hands. That night, Tom walked home in silence. The city was loud, but his world was quiet now. He had everything once: her trust, her love, their future, and he threw it all away for a fling he couldn't even remember clearly. Now, she held the power, and she didn't even want to use it to hurt him. That was the cruelest part. She didn't need revenge. She was past him. She didn't scream, didn't humiliate. She just moved on. Tom realized something he never expected to feel: shame. Not because she won, but because she didn't care to gloat. And that cut deeper than any punishment ever could. Alone in her corner office, Rachel watched the city lights shimmer below. This was the same skyline she used to dream under, before everything broke. She thought the victory would feel sweeter, heavier, but it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release. She wasn't that broken woman anymore. She didn't need him to suffer to know her worth. She built something bigger than pain, bigger than him. She whispered, "Thank you, Tom," under her breath. Not out of forgiveness, but closure. He gave her the final push she never knew she needed. And now, she was free. In the quiet of her apartment, she opened the drawer she hadn't touched in a year. Inside was a single photo, the ultrasound. The baby she lost. She held it, not with grief, but with calm acceptance. This was her real turning point. Not the affair, not the boardroom. She had carried this weight long enough. She kissed the corner of the frame and placed it gently back. Then, slowly, closed the drawer. Not to forget, but to honor, and finally let go. That chapter of her life was over, and the woman she was becoming didn't need to look back. The next morning, Rachel walked into the agency like she owned the world. Not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty. Every step echoed with purpose, not pain. Whispers followed her down the hallway, admiration in their tone. She had survived heartbreak, betrayal, and loss. And she didn't just survive, she rose. There were no more ghosts chasing her, just new clients, new campaigns, new life. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was reinvention. A week later, Tom returned to the agency, uninvited. He stood at reception like a man with nowhere else to go. He wasn't here to talk business. Not this time. Rachel's assistant buzzed her office. She paused, then said, "Send him in." He walked in, folder in hand, shoulders lower than before. He didn't look smug. He looked tired. She didn't stand, didn't smile. He said, "I needed to say something I never did." But Rachel had already decided this wasn't her story to carry anymore. She let him speak, but she didn't give him what he wanted. Tom apologized, not for the affair, but for never seeing her pain. He spoke of the baby, the silence, the guilt he'd buried. Rachel listened, face unreadable, heart still, but not cold. She didn't need his apology. She didn't crave his regret. He had come seeking redemption, maybe forgiveness, but she wasn't the woman he left behind anymore. When he finished, she stood and extended her hand. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said, and meant it. Then she walked him to the door and closed it, gently. Finally, Rachel stepped outside, sunlight brushing her face like an old friend. The city moved around her, fast and loud, but she was steady. No more echoes from that night. No more what-ifs. She thought of her baby, of the woman she was, of the storm she survived. Not every wound needed revenge to heal. Sometimes, strength looked like walking away, quietly. And sometimes, healing wasn't loud. It was just real. Rachel wasn't looking back anymore. Not at the man. Not at the pain. Not even at the victory. She was walking forward. And this time, it was all hers. Months passed, and Rachel built more than just campaigns. She built people. She took rising talent under her wing, guiding them with patience and steel. What no one saw in her darkest moment, she now saw in others. She didn't need to be the loudest in the room anymore. Her presence alone set the tone. Clients trusted her. Her team admired her. She had become what she never thought possible after that night. Whole. Not because she erased the past, but because she owned it. Her story didn't end in pain. It transformed into something bigger than revenge. Legacy. One morning, a new nameplate arrived outside the top-floor office. Rachel, CEO. No fanfare. No applause. Just quiet recognition of what she earned. She stood at the threshold, remembering the girl who once ran away. The one who cried in silence, who packed a suitcase with shaking hands. That girl was gone now, but not forgotten. Because she built the woman who stood here today. Not bitter. Not broken. Just unshakably clear. This wasn't about power. It was about peace. And Rachel had finally found hers. That evening, she stepped into the elevator alone. The doors began to close, her reflection catching in the glass. She smiled. Not at anyone. Just at herself. Not every battle leaves scars on the skin. Some just carve out space for something stronger. Tom? The affair? The heartbreak? All echoes now. She never needed to ruin him. She only needed to rebuild herself. And she did. As the elevator doors shut, one thought lingered. Sometimes, the best revenge is becoming untouchable